The air in Ashwood County's courtroom hung heavy, 90 degrees of Georgia heat choking the silence, as Judge Clarence Holt, eyes glinting with contempt, slammed his gavel. Jamal Carter, 18, black, wiry, stood accused of arson, no trial, just Holt's growl, 20 years. Spectators froze, expecting a broken kid. Instead, Jamal's voice sliced through, steady. "I'll appeal this myself." Holt's smirk faltered. The room gasped. This spark would burn Jamal's life to ash or forge him anew. What would it cost him to fight back? Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from, and if you stand for justice against all odds, hit like and subscribe, because tomorrow's explosive episode is one you can't miss. Jamal Carter slumped against the rusted bars of his holding cell in Ashwood County Jail, the air thick with heat that hit 90 degrees even at dusk, sweat beading on his forehead as he traced the cracks in the concrete floor with a chipped fingernail. His wrists still ached from the cuffs Sheriff Amos Tate had slapped on him 2 nights ago, the metal biting deep as Tate snarled, "You're the one who torched that barn, boy, don't play dumb." The accusation had landed like a punch to the gut, and Jamal's mind spun back to that evening 5 miles from the blaze, rod in hand, fishing in the muddy shallows of Pine Creek, the sun dipping low, painting the water gold. He'd heard the sirens wailing in the distance, seen the smoke curling up over the pines, but never thought it'd circle back to him. Tate had rolled up in his cruiser, lights flashing, deputies flanking him, their boots kicking up dust as they hauled Jamal in without a question. No warrant, just a grunt about a black kid nearby being proof enough. Now locked in this sweltering box, the walls seemed to close in, the faint buzz of a fly trapped with him echoing the chaos in his head. He wasn't just fighting a charge, he was fighting a system that had already stamped guilty on his skin. But Jamal wasn't the type to fold. His grandma Esther had raised him on stories of her days as a courthouse clerk, her voice sharp as she'd recount how justice bent for some and broke for others, her old law books stacked in their sagging trailer like a fortress of defiance. She died 2 years back, cancer eating her slow, but those books, yellowed and dog-eared, had become Jamal's lifeline. He'd pored over them by lamplight, memorizing statutes, dissecting cases, his fingers smudging the pages as he taught himself what most kids his age never dreamed of touching. Grand theft auto precedents, search and seizure loopholes, evidence, rules he knew them cold, running mock arguments in his head while his buddies shot hoops or scrolled phones. Now with a nub of pencil he'd begged off a guard and a scrap of paper torn from a commissary form, he scratched out his first move, a handwritten appeal, every word precise, citing the Fourth Amendment, no probable cause, no witnesses, nothing but Tate's word against his. The cell stank of mildew and despair, but Jamal's pulse steadied as he wrote, the legal jargon flowing like a river he'd learned to navigate blind. He folded the paper tight, slipped it to Deputy Rawls, a lanky guy with tired eyes who'd muttered, "This place'll chew you up, kid," but took it anyway, promising to file it with the clerk. Days crawled by, the heat climbing, 92 degrees, then 94. Jamal pacing 3 steps left, 3 steps right, his sneakers scuffing the floor, replaying every line of that appeal in his mind, praying it'd stick. Then, on the 5th, morning, Rawls shuffled in, no words, just a nod, and hours later a guard barked Jamal's name, cuffs clinking as they dragged him back to court. The Ashwood County Courthouse loomed, a squat brick relic with warped wooden pews and a ceiling fan creaking like it'd give up any second, the gallery half full, locals fanning themselves with folded newspapers, their whispers buzzing as Jamal stood, hands clasped, facing Judge Clarence Holt again. Holt, 63, jowls sagging, his robe stretched tight over a gut fed by years of unchecked power, sat high on the bench, his gray eyes narrowing as he flipped open Jamal's appeal, the paper crinkling loud in the hush. The judge's lips twitched, a sneer tugging at the corner, and he leaned back, chair groaning, fingers drumming the polished oak desk like he was already bored. "What's this nonsense?" he drawled, voice thick with Georgia clay, tossing, the appeal aside like it was trash. "You think you're some kind of lawyer now, Carter? Wasting my time with this?" The crowd tittered, a deputy snorting, but Jamal stood taller, chin up, his voice cutting through the muggy air, steady as steel. "Your Honor, There's no evidence tying me to that fire. No witnesses, no forensics, just Sheriff Tate's say-so. And that ain't legal grounds to hold me." Holt's drumming stopped, his glare sharpening, but Jamal kept going, calm, relentless, reciting case law like a preacher at the pulpit. "Strickland versus Washington, 1984, says a defendant's got to have a fair shot at defense, and you locked me up without one." The room shifted, murmurs swelling, a woman in the back dropping her fan with a clatter, and Holt's face reddened, veins bulging at his temples as he snatched the appeal back, scanning it like he'd missed something. He exhaled hard through his nose, a bull ready to charge, then slapped the paper down, barking, "Fine. I'll reopen this mess, but don't think you're slick, boy." Jamal's chest loosened, a flicker of triumph sparking in his gut as he watched Holt scribble, an order, the gavel smacking wood with a crack that echoed off the walls. The crowd stirred, some nodding, others scowling, and Jamal let himself breathe, thinking he'd cracked the first wall, that maybe, just maybe, he'd walk free soon. 20 years off the table, a hearing set, he could taste it, the chance to shove Tate's lie back in his face, to prove he wasn't the arsonist they'd painted him as. He'd outsmarted Holt, forced the old man's hand, and as the guards hauled him back to the cell, his lips curled into a faint grin, the kind that said he'd won this round. But the victory was a mirage shimmering just long enough to blind him. Back in his cell, the heat still choking, 95 degrees now, he leaned against the bars, replaying the moment Holt caved, the grudging squint in those hate-filled eyes. He didn't hear the footsteps until it was too late. Soft leather, soles on concrete, a shadow falling across the floor. Rawls poked his head in, voice low. "Appeals filed, kid, but Holt's pissed. Watch yourself." Jamal nodded, brushing it off, too caught up in the high of forcing the judge to blink. He didn't see the storm brewing, didn't catch the glint in Holt's eye as the judge stormed into his chambers after the hearing, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled, his bellow bouncing off the walls. "That little punk thinks he can play me," Holt snarled, snatching a phone from his desk, dialing fast, his voice dropping to a growl as he spoke. "Ward, it's me. Get down here. We're burying this Carter kid for good." Minutes later, Elias Ward strode into the courthouse, a prosecutor built like a linebacker, 42, ex-Marine, his buzz cut flecked with grey, his suit crisp despite the heat. A man who'd crushed defendants under his heel for 15 years and loved every second of it. Ward's handshake with Holt was firm, his grin sharp, teeth flashing as he cracked his knuckles, already plotting. "Heard the boy's got a mouth on him," Ward said, voice smooth as oil. "But I've got something he won't talk his way out of." Holt leaned forward, chair creaking, his smirk returning, wider, uglier. "Make it stick, Elias. I want him gone." Ward nodded, eyes glinting with something dark, something personal, a hatred that ran deeper than the case, rooted. In years of sneering at kids like Jamal, kids he'd branded trouble before they could walk. Jamal, back in his cell, stared at the ceiling, oblivious, counting the cracks, his mind racing through the next steps, the hearing, the chance to dismantle Tate's story piece by piece. He didn't know Holt had just unleashed a predator, didn't feel the noose tightening, didn't realize that his appeal, his first taste of pushing back, had lit a fuse that had burned hotter and faster than the barn ever did. The heat pressed down, the fly buzzed louder, and somewhere in Ashwood, Ward was already digging a grave with Jamal's name on it, a trap so tight even a legal genius might not claw out alive. Jamal Carter stood shackled in the crumbling Ashwood County Courthouse, the air stagnant, 90 degrees seeping through cracked windows, the peeling paint curling like dead skin on the walls as he faced Judge Clarence Holt again, the old man's, smirk twisting wider than before, a predator savoring the kill. The gallery buzzed, locals packed shoulder to shoulder, their murmurs a low hum as sweat trickled down Jamal's neck, his orange jumpsuit clinging damp to his skin, but his eyes, burned sharp, locked on Holt, refusing to bend. 5 days had passed since his appeal forced this hearing. 5 days of pacing that sweltering cell, replaying every statute he'd memorized from Grandma Esther's books, every trick he'd drilled into his skull, ready to tear Tate's lie apart. He'd walked in here expecting a fight, but not this, not the trap snapping shut so fast he could barely breathe. Holt leaned back, chair creaking under his bulk, his grey gaze flicking to Elias Ward, the prosecutor towering at his table, suit crisp despite the heat, a stack of papers in his meaty hands, his lips curling into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Your Honor," Ward began, voice booming, smooth as a blade sliding into flesh. "The defendant thinks he's clever, filing his little appeal, wasting this court's time, but we've got something he can't dodge." Jamal's stomach tightened, his pulse kicking up as Ward held up a plastic evidence bag, a dented gas can glinting inside, the kind you'd see at any gas station. But this one, Ward claimed, was pulled from the barn's ashes, Jamal's fingerprints, smeared across the handle. The crowd gasped. A woman in the third row clutching her purse tighter, whispers rippling like wildfire, and Holt's smirk stretched into a full grin, teeth yellowed from years of cheap cigars. "Caught red-handed," Holt muttered, loud enough for the room to hear, his fingers tapping the bench, a rhythm of triumph. Jamal's mind raced, blood roaring in his ears, because he'd never touched a gas can, never been near that barn, never even smelled gasoline that night, just fish and creek water 5 miles away. "That's a lie," he said, voice steady, cutting through the hum, and the room stilled, every eye swinging to him, Holt's tapping freezing mid-beat. "No one saw me there. You've got no witnesses, no timeline, nothing but that can, and I never touched it." Ward chuckled, low and dark, stepping forward, his polished shoes clicking on the warped floorboards. "Oh, we've got more than enough, Carter. Forensic report says your prints are a match, found right where the fire started. You denying science now?" Jamal's jaw clenched, his fists balling in the cuffs because he knew prints didn't lie, but people did. And this stank of a setup, the kind Grandma Esther had warned him about. Cops planting evidence, judges nodding along, a game rigged before the first card hit the table. "When did you find it?" Jamal shot back, eyes narrowing. "I was locked up by then. How's my prints get on something you found after?" Ward's smirk flickered, just a heartbeat, but Jamal caught it, a crack in the armor, and he pressed harder, voice rising. "Where's the chain of custody? Where's the officer who pulled it out? You can't just wave a can and call it proof." The gallery shifted, a man in a straw hat muttering to his wife, heads tilting, and Holt's grin faded, his jowls quivering. As he snatched the forensic report from Ward's stack, scanning it fast, too fast, like he didn't care what it said. "Enough!" Holt barked, slamming the paper down, the crack echoing off the walls. "This ain't a debate, boy. Evidence is evidence, and it says you're guilty. Appeal denied." He paused, then leaned forward, voice dropping low, venomous. "And for wasting my time, I'm adding 5 years, 25 total. Sit down." The gavel smashed wood, a thunderclap, and the crowd erupted, some cheering, others gasping, a tangle of noise as guards grabbed Jamal's arms, yanking him back, his sneakers squeaking on the floor. His chest heaved, rage boiling up because he'd had Holt on the ropes, exposed the holes, and still the judge twisted the knife deeper, piling on years like it was nothing, like Jamal was nothing. He'd walked in thinking he'd dismantle Tate's story, walk out with a chance, but now he was drowning. The sentence heavier, the cell waiting, and that gas can, that damn lie burning in his mind. How'd they pull this off? Who'd touched it before him? He replayed every second since his arrest, the creek, the cuffs, the ride in Tate's cruiser, and it hit him, a jolt like lightning. Maybe they'd brushed it against his hands while he was out cold, a dirty trick in the dark. As the guards shoved him toward the hall, he twisted, catching a glimpse through the closing courtroom doors. Sheriff Amos Tate leaning against the wall, arms crossed, a grin splitting his sunburned face, chatting with a deputy whose badge glinted. Under the flickering lights, the same deputy who'd tightened Jamal's cuffs that night, too tight, too long. Tate's eyes met Jamal's, cold, triumphant, and the deputy laughed, a sharp bark that bounced off the tiles, and Jamal's blood ran cold, realization sinking in, a conspiracy stretching wider than he'd guessed, Tate and Holt and Ward, a triangle of hate with him pinned in the center. The door slammed shut, the hall dimming, and Jamal stumbled, the guard's grip bruising his arms, his mind spinning, because he'd forced a hearing, thought he'd won a crack of light, only to slam into a wall of planted proof and a judge who'd rather see him rot than lose. 25 years now, not 20, and that gas can, a ghost he couldn't shake, loomed over him, a lie forged to bury him alive. What kind of justice let a kid get framed this hard? Could a single teen outsmart a system this rotten? Drop a #1 in the comments if you think Jamal's getting railroaded by a racist setup. Hit like if you're rooting for him to fight back, and subscribe because this story is only getting wilder. How far will Tate and Holt go to keep Jamal down? Will he find a way to turn their own game against them, or is this just the start of a nightmare he can't escape? Stick around, because the next twist might just break everything wide open. Jamal Carter hunched over a splintered table in the Ashwood County Jail's yard, the sun blazing down at 95 degrees, baking the cracked earth beneath his sneakers as he scribbled furiously on scraps of paper torn from an old Bible. The guards had tossed him like a joke, his pencil nub worn to a stub, sweat smearing the ink. The air shimmered with heat, guards lounging in the shade of a warped awning, their voices drifting over, thick with taunts. "Keep writing, lawyer. Boy, ain't no paper gonna save you now." Their laughter sharp, slicing through the drone of cicadas humming in the pines beyond the razor wire. Jamal's ribs ached from the cuffs, his wrists raw, but his mind was a steel trap. Replaying that courtroom farce, the gas can, Ward's smirk, Holt's extra 5 years, 25 total now, a sentence heavier than the heat pressing down on him. He'd lost the appeal, sure, but he wasn't done, not even close, because Grandma Esther's voice echoed in his skull. "They'll cheat you every chance they get, but you don't quit, you find the cracks." He'd found one, a thin sliver of light in the law, a motion to suppress that planted evidence arguing the gas can's sudden appearance after his arrest screamed tampering. No chain of custody, no witnesses to its recovery, just Tate's word, and a judge who'd swallow any lie to keep a black kid caged. His handwriting looped tight, precise, citing Miranda versus Arizona, 1966, and a dozen other cases he'd burned into his memory, each word a brick in a wall he'd built to shove back at Holt. The guards snickered, one spitting tobacco juice near his feet, brown spittle pooling in the dirt. But Jamal kept writing, head down, the pencil shaking in his grip as he finished, folding the motion into a tight square, his pulse thudding with something close to hope. He'd slipped it to Deputy Rawls the next morning, the lanky guard's eyes flickering with something like pity as he tucked it into his pocket, muttering, "You're stirring a hornet's nest, kid," before shuffling off. Days bled into one another, the heat climbing 96 degrees, then 97. Jamal pacing the yard, 3 steps left, 3 right, his sneakers kicking up dust clouds, every creak of the gate making him flinch, waiting for word, for a chance. Then on the 8th day, Rawls came back, no nod this time, just a grunt. Court tomorrow, and Jamal's chest tightened, a mix of dread and fire, because this was it, his shot to rip that gas can out of their hands, to prove they'd framed him cold. The courthouse loomed again. Same peeling paint, same warped pews. The gallery packed tighter now, word spreading about the kid who wouldn't break, locals fanning themselves with rolled-up flyers, the air thick with whispers and 98-degree humidity as Jamal stood, uncuffed this time, his jumpsuit swapped for a borrowed shirt 2 sizes too big, courtesy of Rawls. Judge Holt glared from the bench, his jowls quivering, grey eyes slits of hate as he clutched Jamal's motion, the paper trembling in his thick fingers like he wanted to shred it. Elias Ward stood ready, suit still crisp, his buzz cut glinting under the flickering lights, a predator pacing, waiting to pounce. "Proceed," Holt growled, voice gravelly, and Jamal stepped forward, chin high, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his brow. "Your Honor, that gas can's a plant. It showed up after I was in cuffs, no one saw it at the scene, no report logged it till days later. Where's the proof it was even there? They can't produce a single soul who saw it before my arrest." Ward snorted, cutting in, "Forensics don't lie, Carter. Your prints are on it, end of story." Jamal didn't flinch, locking eyes with the prosecutor. "Then explain the timeline. I was locked up when you found it. How's that work? You got no chain of custody, no officer testimony, nothing but a story that don't add up." The crowd stirred, a man in the back coughing loud, head swiveling, and Holt's face darkened, his fingers curling into fists on the desk. But Jamal kept going, voice rising. "Brady vs. Maryland, 1963, says they gotta disclose exculpatory evidence, and they hid the fact this can's a fake till it suited 'em." Ward opened his mouth, then shut it, his jaw twitching, and a flicker of doubt rippled through the gallery. a woman whispering to her neighbor, eyes wide. Holt slammed his palm down, Wood shuddering. Enough of this circus. But a voice cut through from the back, sharp, clear. "He's right, Judge, where's the log?" It was Maya Ellis, a local reporter, 32, braids pulled tight. Notepad in hand, her pen poised like a weapon as she stood defying the hush. The room exploded, murmurs swelling to a roar, and Holt's glare snapped to her, then back to Jamal, his lips thinning to a white line. He snatched the forensic report again, flipping through it, his breath hissing out, and for a second Jamal thought he'd won, thought he'd cracked the old man's shell, because Holt muttered, "Fine, motion granted, evidence suppressed." The words forced out like they burned his throat, the gavel smacking down with a crack that split the air. The crowd cheered. A ragged wave of noise, hands clapping, a few whoops breaking through, and Jamal's knees nearly buckled, relief flooding him, a grin tugging at his lips as he exhaled, thinking he'd done it, stripped their lie bare, turned, the tide. The guards didn't cuff him this time, just shoved him toward the hall, and he caught Maya's nod, her eyes fierce, promising more, and for a moment he let himself believe he'd climb out of this pit, that 25 years might shrink to zero with that can gone. But the high crashed fast, a brick through glass, because that night, as he lay on his cot, the cell still 95 degrees, the air outside Ashwood turned sour. Maya's story hit the presses. Teen exposes sheriff's frame-up, and it spread like sparks on dry grass, outrage simmering in the county's black neighborhoods, folks gathering on porches, voices rising, but Holt wasn't one to let a loss sit. By midnight, a pickup roared past Lena Carter's shotgun house. Jamal's mom, 51, tough as nails, alone since Esther passed, her windows shattering under a hail of rocks, racial slurs scrawled in red paint across the sagging clapboard, Numrada lover, dripping wet in the moonlight. Lena stumbled out, broom in hand, shouting into the dark, but the truck was gone, taillights fading, and neighbors peeked through curtains, too scared to step up. The phone rang inside, a voice she didn't know, low, rasping. "Tell your boy to shut his mouth or next time it's fire." She hung up fast, hands shaking, and sank to the porch, glass crunching under her slippers, her breath hitching as she stared at the wreckage, knowing this was Holt's doing, his rage spilling. Hover, a warning carved in hate. Back in his cell, Jamal slept fitful, oblivious, the heat pressing down. His dreams tangled with Esther's lessons, not hearing the chaos 20 miles away, not feeling the noose tightening, because Holt, humiliated, wasn't just fighting a case anymore, he was waging a war. And Jamal's little victory had lit a fuse that had burned everything he loved to the ground. Lena Carter stood trembling on the sagging porch of her shotgun house in Ashwood, the night air thick with 90-degree heat, shards of broken glass glinting under the moon like jagged teeth, the red paint still wet, slurs screaming across the clapboard walls, Nana lover smeared bold and ugly, a wound carved into her home by Holt's faceless thugs. The pickup's roar had faded hours ago, leaving silence heavy as lead. Her broom clutched tight, knuckles white, her breath ragged as she swept at the wreckage, each crunch under her slippers a stab to her chest, 51 years of grit tested, in one brutal night. Inside, the phone sat quiet now, that rasping voice. "Next time it's fire," echoing in her skull, a threat she couldn't shake. Her foster kids' toys scattered across the floor, untouched since they'd gone to bed. And her neighbors too scared to stay. 20 miles away, Jamal Carter lay on his cot in Ashwood County Jail, the cellar sweatbox at 95 degrees, concrete walls slick with damp, his borrowed shirt sticking to his skin as he tossed, dreams jagged with Grandma Esther's lessons, oblivious to the chaos tearing at his mum's world, his victory over the gas can still warm in his gut, a flicker of hope he clung to like a lifeline. He'd beaten Holt at his own game, forced the evidence out, thought maybe, just maybe, he'd claw his way free, but the cost was piling up, a debt he didn't yet see. Lena wiped her brow, her dark eyes scanning the street, empty now. Pines, rustling in the humid breeze, her mind racing back to Jamal's last call, smuggled through Deputy Rawls 2 days ago, his voice crackling over the line. "Mama, I got him to drop that can. We're close. Just hold on." She'd smiled then, proud, fierce, but now, staring at the wreckage, fear gnawed at her, because this wasn't just about a barn anymore. It was personal, Holt's rage spilling over, A judge who'd rather burn her life down than let her boy win. She sank to the porch steps, her calloused hands shaking, and made a choice stubborn as ever, dialing Jamal's cell block line, whispering fast when he picked up. "They hit the house, son. Smashed it up. Painted hate all over. I ain't leaving. But you gotta know." Jamal's breath caught, the receiver slick in his grip, his voice dropping low, urgent. "Mama, get out. Go to Aunt Ruth's in Macon, please. They're coming for you 'cause of me." Lena cut him off, sharp. "I ain't running from no cowards, Jamal. I raised you to fight, and I'm staying put." He pleaded, voice cracking. "They'll hurt you. I can't lose you too." But she hung up, resolute, her jaw set as she stood, broom back in hand, sweeping glass like it was war. Jamal slammed the receiver down, the cell's heat choking him, 96 degrees now, his fists pounding the cot, rage and guilt twisting in his gut, because his win, his motion, had painted a target on Lena, and he couldn't reach her, couldn't shield her from Holt's wrath. He paced. 3 steps left, 3 right, sneakers scuffing concrete, his mind spinning because staying quiet wasn't an option. Not now, not with Mama in the crosshairs. He grabbed another scrap, pencil trembling as he scratched out a plan, whispering to himself, "Gotta hit back, gotta make 'em pay." His voice a growl, Esther's lessons surging up. "They'll come for your kin, but you turn it round." By dawn, Lena had rallied neighbors, 6 of them, weathered folks with tired eyes but spines of steel, crowding her tiny living room, the air thick with coffee and resolve as she laid out the attack, the slurs, the threat, her voice steady. "Holt thinks he can scare us quiet, but we're suing him, defamation, harassment, all of it." They nodded, grim, and Jamal's smuggled calls guided her, his words crackling through a borrowed phone. "Mama, cite Georgia Code 15-6-8. Public officials ain't immune if they incite hate. Hit him where it hurts." She scribbled it down, her hand steadying, pride flaring as she pictured him, caged but unbroken, her boy fighting through bars. Days later, the suit hit Holt's desk, filed rough but legal, Lena's name bold at the top, demanding a restraining order against his cronies, the pickup crew, anyone who dared touch her home. The courthouse buzzed again, not Jamal this time, but Lena, standing tall in a borrowed dress, her voice ringing out, "My son's locked up for nothing, and now you're coming for me? We ain't backing down." Holt squirmed, his jowls red, but the law pinned him, a local judge, not him, granting the order fast. A rare crack of justice, the gallery clapping, Lena's neighbors cheering, a small win carved from the wreckage. Jamal got word through Rawls, a slip of paper under his tray. "Mama 1 orders in," and his chest loosened. A grin breaking through because she'd stood firm, turned Holt's attack into a shield. And he let himself believe it, let himself think they'd pushed the beast back, that 25 years might shrink with this momentum, that they'd survive this war together. But Holt wasn't done, not by a mile, his rage festering, a venom deeper than the pine's roots, because a black woman daring to sue him, daring to win, was a cut too deep, a humiliation he'd never swallow. That night, Elias Ward slipped into Lena's foster agency office 90 miles away in Valdosta, a shadow in the dark, his buzz cut a silhouette as he handed an envelope to a caseworker, cash thick inside, his voice low. "She's unfit, gang. Ties, drugs, whatever you need to write, just take those kids." By morning, CPS stormed Lena's house, no warning. 2 white vans screeching up, officers in stiff uniforms ripping her foster girls, 8 and 10, from their beds, their screams piercing the dawn as Lena lunged, shouting, "You can't do this, I've got rights." The lead worker smirked, paper in hand. "Investigation says you're a danger, ma'am, linked to arson and worse." A lie spun from Ward's bribe, Holt's orders, a knife twisted to break her. The girls wailed, clutching dolls as they were dragged to the vans. Lena collapsing to her knees, gravel biting her palms, her sobs choking out. "Jamal, they took 'em," as neighbors watched, helpless, the street silent, but for the engines, fading away. Jamal in his cell, 97 degrees now, felt the air shift when Rawls slipped in, face pale, whispering, "They hit Lena, took the kids, CPS, some bullshit about gangs." Jamal's world tilted, his knees buckling, the cot catching him as he gasped, "No, no, no," his victory. Lena's order, all ash now, because Holt's reach stretched beyond courts, beyond mobs, into the bones of the system, snatching kids, to crush a mother, to crush him. He punched the wall, knuckles splitting, blood smearing concrete, because he'd thought they'd won, thought they'd built a wall. But Holt had torn it down, taken everything, and left Lena broken. A debt, Jamal. Couldn't pay from behind bars. Was this justice? A system that steals kids to silence a fight? Should a mother pay this price for her son's defiance? Drop a number 1 in the comments if you think Lena's strength deserves better than this. Hit like if Holt's corruption makes your blood boil, and subscribe because this battle's far from over. Can Jamal strike back from a cell, or will Holt's next move bury them both? What's left to take when a family's already shattered? Stay tuned, because the fire's only starting to spread. Jamal Carter slumped against the slick concrete wall of the isolation wing in Ashwood County Jail, the air a suffocating 98 degrees, humidity so thick it coated his lungs, his borrowed shirt soaked through, clinging to his bruised skin. As he paced the 6-foot cell, 3 steps left, 3 right, the echo of his sneakers a hollow beat against the silence. The walls dripped with sweat, not his but the cell's. A dank tomb cut off from the yard, the guards, the world, just him, and a stack of legal books Rawls had smuggled in, their spines cracked, pages curling in the heat, Grandma Esther's lessons bleeding through every line he'd memorized. His knuckles still throbbed, scabbed over from punching the wall when he'd heard about Lena. The CPS raid, the girl's screams, his mum's collapse, a wound he couldn't reach, couldn't heal, 20 miles away in a house painted with hate. 97 degrees yesterday, 98 today, the heat climbing with his rage. Because Holt had taken everything, the kids, Lena's spirit and Jamal's little win, that Gask tossed out, felt like ash now, a hollow echo against the system's fist. He'd lain awake all night, eyes burning, replaying her voice. They took him, Jamal, and his own, helpless. I'll fix this, Mama. A promise he'd die to keep, because giving up wasn't in him. Not after Esther, not after Lena's. Fight? He flipped open a book, Constitutional Law 3rd edition, fingers trembling as he traced the text, searching for a weapon, something big, because motions and suits weren't enough anymore, not when Holt played dirty, snatching kids with bribes and lies. His breath steadied. A plan forming sharp as a blade, a federal complaint. Title 42, Section 1983, Civil Rights Violation, Racial Bias, a charge that'd drag Holt's robe through the mud, force eyes beyond Ashwood to see this war. He scratched it out on a scrap, pencil digging into the paper, every word a bullet. Judge Clarence Holt, in collusion with Sheriff Amos Tate and Prosecutor Elias Ward, has systematically targeted me, a black defendant, with fabricated evidence and retaliatory acts, including the unlawful seizure of my family's children, his hand shaking as he wrote Lena's name. The girls, the slurs, the rocks, a litany of hate he'd shoved down Holt's throat. Rawls slipped in at dawn, 99 degrees, his boots scuffing the floor, eyes darting as he took the complaint, whispering, "This'll rattle cages, kid. Feds don't mess around." And Jamal nodded, jaw tight. "Good. Let 'em come." The guard vanished, the paper tucked under his shirt, and Jamal waited, pacing again. The cell a furnace, his pulse hammering, because this wasn't just about him anymore. It was Lena, the girls, every soul Holt had crushed under his gavel. Days stretched, the heat relentless, 100 degrees by noon. Guards glaring through the slot, their taunts muffled. "You're done, Carter." But he ignored them, flipping pages, reciting law, his voice a low hum against the drip of condensation. Then on the 4th day, Rawls burst in, sweat beading on his brow. Feds took it, hearing set 2 weeks in Hushas, and Jamal's chest cracked open, a grin breaking through because he'd done it, pierced the county's skin, brought the fight. To Holt's doorstep, a federal judge looming now, not some local crony, a chance to rip the mask off this racist machine. He sank to the cot, hands shaking, relief flooding him, because 2 weeks meant air, meant hope, meant Lena might get the girls back, that 25 years might crumble if he could prove Holt's bias, prove the frame-up, prove they'd picked the wrong kid to bury. He pictured it. Holt squirming, Ward scrambling, Tate sweating, the courtroom packed, the feds' pens scratching, and for the first time in weeks, he let himself believe he'd turned the tide, that he'd outsmarted them. dragged justice kicking and screaming into Ashwood. The cell felt lighter, the heat bearable, 101 degrees, and he closed his eyes, exhaling slow, tasting victory, fragile but real, a crack wide enough to climb through. But Holt wasn't a man to wait, not a man to let feds sniff around his kingdom without drawing blood first. That night the courthouse lights burned late. Holt in his chambers, 90 degrees even there, his robe off, shirt unbuttoned, gut spilling over his belt as he paced, phone pressed to his ear, voice a hiss. "He's gone too far. Rawls says it's federal now. We end this tonight." Ward's voice crackled back, calm, cold. "I'll handle it, Judge. He won't make that hearing." Holt slammed the receiver down, his jowls quivering, rage boiling over because Jamal's complaint wasn't just a paper. It was a spotlight, a threat to his throne, and he'd rather see the kid dead than deposed. At midnight, the isolation. Wing's door clanged open, 2 guards stomping in, not Rawls but brutes, 6'3" each, faces carved from stone, their batons tapping palms, eyes glinting with orders Holt had barked hours ago. Teach him a lesson, make it stick. Jamal jolted up, cot creaking, the books tumbling as he backed to the wall. "What's this?" His voice sharp, but they didn't answer. Just lunged, fists swinging, boots stomping. The first blow cracking his jaw, a wet snap, blood flooding his mouth as he stumbled, the second slamming his ribs, 3 cracking loud, splintering under. The weight. He swung back, wild, fists glancing off muscle, but they laughed, guttural, pinning his arms, a knee smashing his gut, air whooshing out, his vision blurring as he crumpled, concrete cold against his cheek, blood pooling, sticky, warm, a baton crashing down, splitting his brow, pain exploding white-hot. They didn't stop. 10 blows, 15. His gasps turning to wheezes, ribs screaming, the cell spinning. 102 degrees now, the heat choking him as much as the fists, and he thought of Lena, the girls, his complaint, all slipping. Away, a dream beaten out of him. The guard stepped back, panting, one spitting on the floor. "Stay down, trash." And they left, door slamming, the lock clicking, silence falling heavy as the dark. Jamal lay there, broken, blood dripping, ribs grinding with every shallow breath, his books scattered, pages torn, the complaints echo mocking him, because he'd tasted freedom, felt it close, only to have Holt rip it away, not with law, but with fists, a message carved in bruises. "You don't win here." Ward waited outside, leaning on the wall, buzzcut glinting under a flickering bulb, a smirk tugging his lips as he heard the groans through the steel, his voice low. "Told you, Judge, he's done." And he walked off, shoes clicking, leaving. Jamal curled on the floor, a heap of pain and defiance, because even now, coughing blood, he wasn't finished. Not yet. Not while he could still think, still breathe, still fight. The heat pressed down 103 degrees, the cell a grave, but his mind flickered, Esther's voice faint. "They'll break your body, not your soul." And he clung to it, a thread, because Holt thought this was the end. Thought. He'd silenced him. But Jamal's war was just beginning, a war he'd wage with every bone they couldn't shatter. Jamal Carter lay handcuffed to a hospital bed in Ashwood County Medical, the air a sterile 90 degrees, antiseptic stinging his nose as machines beeped steady, his chest a map of bruises, 3 ribs cracked, jaw swollen, brow stitched, blood crusted under his nails from the guard's midnight lesson. A beating ordered by Holt that had left him gasping on the isolation cell floor, 103 degrees of heat searing his broken body. Pain throbbed with every breath, sharp as glass, but his mind burned hotter, replaying Lena's sobs, the girl's screams, the federal complaint he'd filed, a lifeline now dangling by a thread, because Holt wasn't just fighting to win, he was fighting to erase him. The bed creaked as he shifted, cuffs clinking, a stolen pen from a nurse's tray gripped in his swollen fingers, scribbling on a napkin, every word a fight, a new motion to push that complaint forward, to drag Holt's racist empire into the Fed's glare, because giving up wasn't an option. Not with Mama shattered. Not with Esther's ghost whispering, "They'll bleed you dry, but you bleed 'em back." His ribs screamed as he wrote, detailing the beating, the planted gas can, the CPS raid, a litany of hate he'd shove under a federal judge's nose, his handwriting shaky but fierce. Title 42, Section 1983, Civil Rights. torn to shreds by a judge who'd rather see him dead than free. A nurse bustled in, 40-ish, grey streaks in her bun, her eyes softening as she checked his IV, muttering, "You're a tough one, kid." And Jamal seized the chance, slipping the napkin to her, voice a rasp. "Get this to Deputy Rawls, please. It's all I've got left." She hesitated, then nodded, tucking it into her pocket, and he exhaled, a flicker of hope sparking through the haze of pain. Because if it reached Rawls, it had reached the feds, and Holt's throne might finally shake. Days crawled by, the hospital a blur of white walls and 92-degree stillness. Jamal drifting in and out, painkillers dulling the edges but not the fire, his mind racing, plotting, because 25 years loomed. The girls were gone. Lena was broken, and Holt's fists hadn't killed his fight, only sharpened it. Then on the 5th day, Rawls slipped in, uniform rumpled, sweat beading on his brow, whispering, "Feds got it, kid. It's going viral. Maya's got footage. Of the bruises, protests are hitting the streets." Jamal's pulse spiked, a grin tugging his split lip despite the sting. Because Maya Ellis, that reporter with the braids and the notepad, had turned his blood into a megaphone. Her grainy video of his battered face, ribs purple and black, spreading. Online hashtags flaring, "Justice for Jamal." Ashwood's black folks marching, signs waving, voices roaring outside the jail, the courthouse, Holt's own house, a tide he couldn't ignore. The hospital TV flickered, a news anchor's voice cutting through. Teens beating sparks outrage, federal hearing set, and Jamal's chest loosened, relief flooding him, because the feds weren't just sniffing now, they were coming, and Holt's gavel couldn't stop them. By week's end, the pressure cracked, protests swelling, 100 strong, then 200, the governor's office fielding calls, and Holt, cornered, had no choice, signing a bail order with a scowl, his jowls quivering as he barked at Ward over the phone, "Get him out before they storm the damn place." Guards hauled Jamal from the bed, 93 degrees outside, uncuffing him, shoving him into the sun, his borrowed shirt swapped for a tattered hoodie, ribs grinding as he stumbled onto the courthouse steps, the crowd erupting, a sea of fists, and cheers, "Jamal, Jamal," washing over him, drowning the pain, his legs trembling but his head high, because he was free, out, breathing air that wasn't jail stale, tasting victory, real this time. Not a scrap of paper, but bodies in the street, voices shaking the pines. He scanned the faces. Lena there, bandaged from her own fight, tears streaking as she pushed through, hugging him tight. "You did it, son." And he hugged back, ribs screaming, but he didn't care, because they'd won. Forced Holt's hand, turned a beating into a spotlight, and 25 years felt distant, a shadow shrinking under the crowd's roar. He let himself believe it, let the chance carry him, thinking he'd broken the beast, that the feds would finish it, that he'd rebuild with Lena, get the girls back, stand taller than Holt's hate. But freedom was a trap, a breath before. The fall because Holt wasn't a man to bend, he was a man to break, and Ward was his hammer, already swinging. Hours later, as dusk settled, 94 degrees cloaking Ashwood in a humid haze, a deputy's cruiser screeched to a stop 2 miles from the courthouse. Deputy Hank Reese, 36, buzzcut like Ward's, a Holt loyalist, slumped in the driver's seat, blood pooling from a gunshot to the chest, his radio crackling static, the gun missing, the scene staged fast but sloppy. Sheriff Tate rolled up, lights flashing, his sunburned face twisting into a grin as he surveyed the body, muttering, "Perfect." And by midnight, the news hit. A different anchor this time, voice grim. Deputy found dead, suspect Jamal Carter, recently bailed, linked to the weapon. Jamal crashing at a friend's trailer 95 degrees inside, jolted awake as the TV blared. Lena beside him gasping, "No, no, they can't." But they could. They did, because Ward strode into Holt's chambers that night, suit wrinkled, now his smirk back, holding a baggie with a pistol. "Found this in his cell, Judge. Prints are his. We've got him cold." Holt's laugh rumbled, deep, vicious. "Murder, huh? That'll stick better than arson." And he leaned back, chair groaning, his grey eyes glinting, because a dead deputy trumped a barn, trumped a complaint, a charge to bury Jamal deeper than 25 years ever could. The trailer door rattled at dawn, deputies pounding, guns drawn. "Carter, you're under arrest, murder one," and Jamal stumbled up, ribs aching, hoodie slipping as they cuffed him, Lena screaming, "He was here, he didn't do this." But they dragged him out, boots kicking gravel. The crowd gone now, replaced by glares, whispers, "Killer." The tide turning fast. Ward filed the charge by noon, his voice booming in court. Jamal Carter planned this from jail, killed Deputy Reese in revenge. And Holt nodded, gavel poised, adding, "No bail, held till trial," his smirk wider than ever, because Jamal's win, the protests, the feds, all crumbled under a frame-up so bold it stole the air. Jamal sat in a new cell, 96 degrees, blood still on his knuckles from the hospital, staring at the wall because he'd walked free, felt the sun, only to have Holt snatch it back, not with fists this time, but with a corpse, a lie so big it'd crush him, Lena, everything, unless he could fight again, bleed again, win again. Did Holt just outplay a kid who dared to dream? Can a system this twisted bend under one teen's will? Drop a number 1 in the comments if you think Jamal's innocence is worth fighting for. Hit like if Ward's frame-up makes you sick, and subscribe because this war's hitting a boiling point. Will Jamal unravel this murder trap? Or has Holt finally locked him in a cage he can't crack? What's the next blow when a deputy's blood stains your name? Keep watching, because this story's about to explode. Jamal Carter sat shackled in a new cell at Ashwood County Jail, the air a punishing 97 degrees, concrete walls radiating heat like a furnace, his hoodie torn, ribs grinding with every shallow breath, the murder charge for Deputy Reese, a noose tightening around his neck, Holt's latest lie pinning him to a crime he'd never touched, a gun found in his old cell, prints somehow his, a frame-up so slick it had turned the crowd's cheers to curses overnight. The cell stank of sweat and rust, a single bulb flickering overhead, casting jagged shadows as he leaned against the bars, blood still flaking from his knuckles, his mind racing, because he'd walked free for 6 hours, tasted air, hugged Lena, only to have Ward rip it away with a dead man's blood, Holt's gavel slamming him back into this hole. No bail, trial pending, a death penalty whisper floating in the air. His borrowed legal books were gone, confiscated, but Esther's lessons clung to him, etched deep. They'll stack the deck, but you shuffle it back. And he clung to that, eyes burning as he traced the cracks in the wall, replaying the chaos, the deputies dragging him from the trailer, Lena's screams, the news anchor's cold voice, suspect Jamal Carter, linked to the weapon. A lie spun so fast he couldn't breathe. He'd beaten the gas can, forced the feds in, walked. Out on bail. But Holt wasn't playing law anymore, he was playing executioner. And this murder rap was a guillotine, sharp and final. Jamal's jaw clenched, teeth grinding because giving up wasn't in him. Not with Lena out there, not with the girls still gone, not with a federal hearing looming, a thread he couldn't let snap. He needed evidence, needed a crack. And as the heat climbed 98 degrees, his mind latched onto Reese's death, the timing, the gun. A puzzle he'd solve or die trying. Days bled into nights, the cell a sweatbox, his sneakers pacing a worn path, 3 steps left, 3 right until a chance came. A whisper through the bars, Rawls slipping in, 99 degrees, his voice low. "Folks are talking, kid, old man Rufus saw something that night." And Jamal's pulse spiked, a lifeline dangling because Rufus, 72, grizzled, half-blind, lived near the courthouse, a porch sitter who saw everything. Rawls slipped him a pencil nub, a scrap of paper, write fast. And Jamal did, a motion for a hearing, demanding Rufus testify, his hand shaking as he scratched. Eyewitness claims Sheriff Tate planted the gun. Exculpatory evidence withheld. Brady violation. The words a lifeline, a shot at tearing Ward's story apart. Rawls took it, vanishing into the dark, and Jamal waited, the heat hitting 100 degrees, his shirt soaked, hope flickering, because if Rufus talked, if he saw Tate, this could unravel, could shove that murder charge back in Holt's face. The hearing came fast 3 days later, the courthouse packed, air thick with 101 degrees of Georgia humidity, pews groaning under the weight of locals, their whispers abuzz as Jamal shuffled in, cuffs biting his wrists, his borrowed shirt swapped for a jail jumpsuit, orange and stiff, Lena in the front row, her bandaged hands clasped, eyes fierce despite the hollows beneath them. Holt glowered from the bench, jowls quivering, his grey gaze a storm as Ward stood, suit rumpled now, his buzz cut glinting under the lights, ready to bury Jamal again. "Proceed," Holt barked, voice gravelly, and Jamal stepped up, ribs aching, voice steady. "Your Honor, I've got a witness. Rufus Hayes saw Sheriff Tate plant that gun, not me. This whole charge is a setup." Ward laughed, sharp. "A half-blind drunk's word against an officer? That's desperate, Carter." But Jamal didn't flinch, locking eyes with Holt. "Then let him talk unless you're scared of the truth." The crowd stirred, a woman gasping, head swiveling, and Holt's face reddened, his fist slamming. The desk wood shuddering. "Bring him in." A growl forced out because the feds were watching, the protests still simmering, and he couldn't dodge this without looking weak. Rufus shuffled in, cane tapping, his milky eyes squinting, voice raspy as he swore in. "I was on my porch 2 miles out, saw Tate sneak into that cruiser, tuck a gun under the seat. 'Fore they found Reese dead. Wasn't no black kid there. Just Tate grinning like a fox." The gallery erupted, shouts bouncing off the walls, Lena's hands flying to her mouth, and Ward lunged. "Objection! He's unreliable, half senile." But Jamal cut in. "He's sober, Your Honor, and—" "His house faces the road, perfect view, check the maps." Holt's glare darted to Ward, then back, his breath hissing out because Rufus's words stuck. A splinter in the frame-up, and the crowd's roar pinned him, feds in the back scribbling fast. He rubbed his temples, chair creaking, then muttered, "Charge dismissed, insufficient evidence," the gavel cracking down. A sound Jamal felt in his bones, relief flooding him as the cuffs clicked off, Lena rushing up, hugging him tight. "You did it again, son?" Her voice breaking. The room, a chaos of cheers and glares. Because he'd won, stripped the murder rap away, humiliated Holt in his own court a second time now, the tide turning, 25 years fading, freedom close enough to taste. He grinned, ribs screaming but ignored, thinking he'd cracked. The beast open, that Tate's slip would drag them all down, that he'd walk out and rebuild. But Holt wasn't broken. He was boiling, his empire dented, not destroyed. And as Jamal limped out, the sun dipping, 94 degrees cloaking Ashwood in dusk, the air turned thick with gasoline fumes, a rumble growing, not thunder, but engines. 50 pickups roaring into town, headlights slicing the dark. Men spilling out, hoods up, bats and chains in hand. A lynch mob Holt had summoned, his voice a hiss over the phone hours ago. "He's out, finish him, make it loud." The streets erupted, boots stomping, glass shattering, a bottle smashing near Jamal's feet as he ran, Lena behind him, the crowd scattering, screams piercing the night as the mob closed in. "Get the nah!" echoing off the pines, their rage Holt's, raw and unhinged. Jamal darted into an alley, ribs burning, dragging Lena with him, his hideout a friend's shed 10 blocks away. The only shot, but the mob was faster, a torch arcing through the air, slamming the shed's roof, flames licking up, 100 degrees now, smoke choking them as they burst out, coughing, stumbling. The heat searing Jamal's leg, a burn blistering fast, his sneakers melting on asphalt as he pulled Lena clear, barely, the shed collapsing in a roar of fire. They hid panting behind a dumpster, the mob howling past, chains clanking, and Jamal's chest heaved, blood and sweat mixing, because he'd beaten the charge, walked free, only to face this, Holt's hate unbound, a mob, not a court, death, not a sentence, and he knew crouched there, leg throbbing, Lena trembling, that winning in court wasn't winning, not when Holt could burn the world to keep him down. Jamal Carter crouched in the borrowed trailer 10 miles outside Ashwood, the air a sweltering 98 degrees, the tin walls creaking under a humid night wind, his leg bandaged from the mob's torch, a burn blistering red and raw, his ribs still grinding, breath shallow as he hunched over a rickety table, legal texts sprawled out, pages curling in the heat, borrowed from a friend who'd risked everything to hide him after the shed went up in flames. Lena sat across, her hands trembling, bandages peeling from her own cuts, eyes hollow but fierce. The slurs on her house, the CPS raid, the mob's roar all carved into her face, 51 years of steel now tested beyond breaking. The trailer smelled of mildew and gasoline, a faint echo of the fire that had nearly swallowed them. 95 degrees when they'd stumbled in, now 98, the heat climbing with the stakes, because Jamal was a fugitive again, not for murder this time, but for surviving, for winning, for daring to breathe after Holt's mob failed to burn him alive. His hoodie hung loose, sweat-soaked, as he flipped through constitutional law, fingers smudging ink. His mind a razor, cutting through the chaos, because the federal complaint was still alive, the beating, the frame-ups, the mob, all fuel to bury Holt, and he'd push it till the feds tore Ashwood apart. The shed's ashes were still smoking when Maya Ellis found them, her braids swinging as she banged on the trailer door. 96 degrees then, her voice urgent. "Jamal, I've got the feds on speed dial. Your complaint's gold now. That..." Mobs on camera nationwide. Her phone glowed, footage of the pickups, the torches, the chants, "Get the nectar." Viral in hours. Millions watching. Hashtags exploding. Ashwood burns. Protests flaring beyond Georgia. A tide Holt couldn't dam. Jamal's chest tightened, a grin tugging his split lip, because Maya's articles, her clips, were rockets, and he fed her every scrap, the gas can, the beating, the CPS bribe, his voice hoarse as he whispered, "Get this to the feds, Maya, all of it." And she nodded, typing fast, her pen a sword he'd wield from this hideout. Days blurred, the heat relentless, 99 degrees, then 100. Jamal poring over law, Lena brewing coffee, Maya shuttling updates. Feds are moving, hearings set, her eyes blazing as she slipped him a burner phone. "You're shaking the world, kid." The hearing hit fast. A federal judge in Atlanta, 90 miles north. A gray-haired woman, Judge Ellis, no kin to Maya, her robe crisp, courtroom cool at 75 degrees. A shock after Ashwood's furnace. Jamal in a borrowed suit. Ribs. Sataped, leg limping. Lena beside him, the gallery packed. Reporters scribbling, feds in suits. Holt forced to the stand, his jowls quivering, grey eyes darting as Jamal stood, voice steady. "Your Honor, Judge Holt's run a racist war against me, planted evidence, beat me, burned my home, all 'cause I wouldn't bow." He laid it out, the gas can, the beating's bruises, the mob's flames, Maya's footage rolling on a screen, gasps rippling through the room as Holt squirmed, Ward beside him, buzz-cut glinting, his smirk gone, papers shuffling uselessly. Judge Ellis leaned forward, glasses glinting. "These are grave claims, Mr. Carter, and the evidence backs you." Her voice firm as she turned to Holt. "You're recused, effective now. Ashwood's case is under review." A gavel crack that shook the air, reporters bolting, Lena grabbing Jamal's hand. "You did it, son." Her tears falling as the crowd roared, a wave of triumph, because Holt was off the bench, his empire cracking, the feds digging, 25 years dissolving. Freedom real, tangible. A breath Jamal hadn't dared take till now. He limped out 92 degrees in Atlanta's dusk, Maya beside him. "You're a hero, Jamal." Her articles hitting presses, judge ousted in racism scandal, the nation watching, Ashwood streets buzzing, protests cheering. A tide. He'd turned, thinking he'd dismantled the beast, that Lena'd get the girls, that he'd rebuild from ash. But Holt wasn't finished, not broken, just biding, his hate a coal glowing under the rubble. Because recusal wasn't defeat, it was a pause, and Ward was his shadow, moving fast. That night, 101 degrees back in Ashwood, Ward slipped into a bar, 90 miles south, Valdosta, a dive stinking of beer and smoke, meeting Judge Vernon Pike, 58, Holt's old law school buddy, a crony with a gavel and a grin, his robe traded for a polo, sipping whiskey as Ward slid him a file. "Vern's your new man, Holt's out, but we're not done. Carter's still breathing." Pike nodded, eyes glinting. "I'll take it. Got something for him." And by morning, Pike sat in Ashwood's courthouse, Holt's bench now his, a smirk tugging his lips as he reopened the arson case, a stack of lost statements in hand. White farmers, 3 of them, claiming Jamal confessed that night, said he'd burn. The barn for kicks, their scrawl fresh, ink still wet. A lie spun overnight, Ward's doing, Holt's ghost laughing through it. The hearing hit like a storm. 93 degrees, Jamal dragged back, cuffs biting, Lena beside him, gasping, "They can't, you won!" But Pike leaned forward, voice oily. New evidence, Carter. Witnesses say you bragged. Arson's back. On bail revoked. His gavel slamming, a crack that stole the air, deputies lunging. Jamal's leg buckling as they hauled him, the gallery shouting. Maya's pen freezing because the feds win. Holt's recusal crumbled under Pike's grin. A betrayal so deep it cut to bone. Ward smirking in the hall. Told you, kid, you... Don't beat us. And Jamal's world tilted, a cell waiting 100 degrees the victory ash. Because he'd thought he'd won, thought he'd toppled Holt, only to face a new judge, a new lie, a system that'd bend but never break. Does a win mean anything when the system swaps one racist for another? Can one kid's fight topple a machine this rotten? Drop a number 1 in the comments if you think Jamal's been betrayed by a justice that's just a mask. Hit like if Pike's dirty play fires you up, and subscribe because this roller coaster's nowhere near done. Will Jamal claw out of this new trap, or has Ward finally boxed him in? What's left to fight with when the feds turn blind? Stay locked in, because the next chapter's about to hit like a freight train. Jamal Carter stood on the rain-slicked steps of Ashwood County Courthouse, 100 degrees of Georgia heat, replaced by a sudden storm, water pounding the cracked stone, soaking his borrowed suit, his leg throbbing from the burn, ribs aching. Under tape, cuffs gone but the weight of Pike's gavel still crushing him. The arson charge reborn on forged farmer statements, a lie so bold it had yanked him back into this fight, Lena beside him, her bandaged hands clenched, rain streaking. Her face, 51 years of steel now trembling, the crowd behind them, a ragged line of supporters, umbrellas swaying, voices low but fierce. The trailer was ash, the cell a memory. And now this, Pike's smirk, Ward's nod, Holt's ghost in every forged word. Jamal confessed. A trap sprung fast. But Jamal wasn't done. Not with the feds still sniffing. Not with Maya's footage. Burning online, not with Esther's voice in his skull. They'll lie till they choke, but you choke 'em back. He'd been hauled in at dawn, 94 degrees then. Pike's caught a furnace of hate. The judge leaning forward. Witnesses say you bragged, Carter. Arson's back. No bail. But Jamal had fought, voice steady. Those statements are fake, Your Honor, no dates, no notary, check the ink. And the crowd had stirred. A murmur swelling because he'd caught it. A flaw, a rush job Ward hadn't polished. Pike's eyes had narrowed, his polo shirt crony vibe slipping, but Jamal kept pushing. I taught myself handwriting analysis, spent years on Esther's books, those loops, those slants, they're all the same hand, forged overnight. His words a blade, slicing through the hum, rain drumming outside as he pulled a crumpled page from his pocket, a sample from jail. Compare it, I dare you. The gallery buzzed, Lena nodding, Maya scribbling, and Pike snatched the statements, squinting, his breath hissing out. Because Jamal was right, the ink too fresh, the curves too tight, a forgery laid bare under a kid's glare. Ward lunged. Objection, he's no expert, but Jamal cut in. Don't need a degree to see a lie, just eyes, and the crowd roared, a woman shouting, Check it, Judge! Pike's face reddened, rain rattling windows, his chair creaking, as he flipped pages, stalling. But the feds in the back, suits crisp, leaned forward, pens poised, and he couldn't dodge it, not with eyes this big watching. To dismissed, Pike muttered, voice a growl. Statements tossed, insufficient evidence. The gavel cracking down, a sound Jamal felt in his spine, relief flooding him as deputies stepped back, Lena grabbing his arm. You're a damn genius, son. Her voice breaking, the crowd chanting his name. Jamal! Jamal! A wave crashing over the storm because he'd done it again ripped their lie apart, turned Pike's trap to dust. The arson fading, freedom close, real, his leg burning but his head high, thinking he'd cracked the system wide, that Holt's shadow was shrinking, that he'd walk out and rebuild. The rain softened, 93 degrees, supporters clapping his back, Maya's grin fierce. You're unstoppable, kid. And he let himself believe it, let the chance lift. Him, because 25 years was a ghost now. The feds digging, Pike squirming, a tide he'd turned with his own hands. But Holt wasn't a ghost. He was a spectre, lurking. His empire bruised but breathing, and Ward was his blade, cutting deeper than Jamal could see. That night, as the storm cleared, 95 degrees, cloaking Ashwood in a humid hush, Lena vanished, no call, no note. Her shotgun house empty, the painted slurs still wet from rain, a neighbor peering out. Saw a van, black, no plates, screeched off round 10. and Jamal's gut-twisted, rain-soaked suit clinging as he sprinted there, legs screaming, ribs grinding, the door ajar, coffee cold on the table, her broom propped like she'd just stepped out. His phone buzzed. Maya's voice, "Jamal, they've got her. Holt's crew heard it from a source." And his knees buckled, the porch catching him, because this wasn't a charge, wasn't a cell. It was Lena, his rock, snatched to break him. Hours bled into dawn, 96 degrees, Jamal pacing the trailer, Maya digging. "They're demanding you drop the federal suit, kid, or she's gone," her words a punch, and he punched back, fist splitting wood. "They don't get to win. Not like this," his voice a roar because Holt's allies had struck not with law but with flesh. A ransom he couldn't pay without losing everything. The feds moved slow. "We're searching," a suit said. But Jamal couldn't wait, couldn't breathe, every tick of the clock a knife, and by dusk, 97 degrees, a call crackled through, a deputy's rasp. "Found her! Ditch off! Route 12!" And Jamal ran, leg burning. Maya's car screeching gravel, rain starting again, pounding as they pulled up, 100 degrees in his chest, fear choking him. Lena lay there, half dead, beaten, her face a map of purple and red, wrists raw from ropes, pulse faint, rain pooling around her, a note pinned to her shirt. "Drop it or she's next." Holt's handwriting, a taunt, a dare. Jamal fell to his knees, rain mixing with tears. "Mama, no," his voice breaking as Maya called medics, sirens wailing, deputies swarming. But Lena's eyes fluttered, barely there, her breath a whisper. "Fight, son," and he clutched her. Hand, ribs screaming because he'd won in court, tossed the forgery, thought he'd turned the tide only to have Holt rip her from him, not with fists this time, but with a beating that left her broken, a mother shattered to shatter him. Medics lifted her, stretcher rattling, 98 degrees, Jamal stumbling beside. "Stay with me, Mama," his resolve cracking, because this wasn't a case, wasn't a lie he could unspin. It was blood, his blood, spilling in a ditch, Holt's. Allies laughing somewhere in the dark, a blow so deep it cut past bone, past law into his soul. And he knew, rain soaking him, that winning wasn't enough, not when they'd take her to stop him. Jamal Carter sat beside Lena's hospital bed in Ashwood County Medical, the air a sterile 90 degrees, machines beeping a frail rhythm, her face swollen, purple and black, wrists raw from ropes, her breath shallow, on life support after Holt's. Allies left her broken in that rain-soaked ditch off Route 12, a note pinned to her chest. "Drop it or she's next." A threat that had carved itself into Jamal's skull. 98 degrees outside when they'd found her, now 95. The storm gone, but the heat clinging. His leg burned throbbing under a fresh bandage, ribs grinding. His borrowed suit swapped for a hoodie soaked with sweat and rain. Hands trembling as he whispered legal strategies to her unconscious form. "Mama, I'm getting you justice, hold on." His voice cracking because she was his rock, 51 years of steel now a whisper, and he'd lost her, not to death yet, but to Holt's hate, a blow that had shattered his world. The trailer was ash, the girls gone, the feds too slow, and Pike's forged statements tossed in court were a hollow win when Lena lay here, tubes snaking from her arms, a mother beaten to break him. He'd walked out of that hearing, crowd, chanting, thinking he'd turned the tide only to find her like this. Holt's shadow stretching beyond Ashwood, beyond law, into blood, and Jamal's rage burned hotter than the 100 degrees he'd fought through. Esther's voice echoing, "They'll take all you got, but you take it back twice." He leaned close, Lena's hand limp in his. "I'm ending this, Mama." A vow he'd bleed for because dropping the federal suit wasn't an option, not when it was all he had left to bury Holt, Ward, Pike, the whole rotten machine. Maya Ellis slipped in. 96 degrees now, her braids tight, eyes fierce, a recorder in hand. "Jamal, we've got him if we move fast. Ward's sloppy, he's bragging." Her voice low, urgent, and Jamal's head snapped up, pulse, spiking, because Maya'd been his megaphone, her footage, her words, and now she'd heard whispers Ward in a Valdosta bar, 90 miles south, boasting about bribes, about Lena, a slip Jamal could turn into a noose. He nodded, jaw tight. "Record him, Maya, every word, we sting him." His mind racing, a plan forming, reckless, raw, because he couldn't wait for feds, couldn't sit while Lena faded. He'd drag Ward down himself, make him choke on his Own arrogance. She grinned, fierce. I'm on it, kid. You write the script, and slipped out, leaving Jamal with a burner phone, 97 degrees. His fingers flying over a notepad, scribbling questions, traps. Ask about the CPS cash. The farmer's pay, get him loud. A playbook to catch Ward live, a confession to shove under the feds' noses. Days blurred. The hospital a haze of antiseptic and heat. 98 degrees, Jamal pacing beside Lena, whispering updates. We're close, Mama, as Maya worked, her voice crackling through the burner. Gotta meet. Bar tomorrow. He's drinking heavy. And Jamal's chest tightened, hope flickering because this was it. A shot to flip the board, to turn Holt's hammer into his own ruin. The sting hit at midnight, 99 degrees in Valdosta. Maya wired up, recorder hidden, bar stinking of whiskey and smoke. Ward slouched at a corner table, buzz cut glinting, suit wrinkled, 3 drinks deep, his voice slurring as she slid. Elias, heard you're the man behind Ashwood. How'd you pull that CPS trick? He laughed, loud, sloppy. Cash, darling, $1,000 to the right hands, kids were gone, broke that Carter bitch fast. And Maya pressed. What about the farmers? Holt's idea. Ward smirked. No, mine. $50 each. Wrote it myself. Pike just nodded. Holt's out, but I'm running it now. His words gold, every syllable a nail, recorded clear as day. She slipped out, 100 degrees, heart pounding, and raced to Jamal, the tape in hand. We've got him, kid, every damn word. And Jamal's grin split his face, pain forgotten, because this was it. Ward's voice, Holt's shadow, Pike's nod, a confession to shred them all. He limped to a payphone, 95 degrees now, rain starting again, calling the feds. Got a tape. Ward admitting bribes, assaults, forgery. Get it now. And they moved. Fast, suits swarming Valdosta. By dawn, 96 degrees, arresting Ward in his motel, cuffs clicking, his smirk gone. What the hell? As they hauled him off, the tape blasting online, Maya's upload. Prosecutor confesses in Ashwood scandal, millions watching, protests roaring louder, feds raiding Pike's office, Holt's house, a tidal wave Jamal had unleashed from a hospital room, a sting that had cracked the empire wide. He sat by Lena, 97 degrees, her machine steady, his voice soft. We got 'em, Mama. Ward's done. Holt's next. And he let himself believe it. Let the feds' sirens sing victory because the tape was ironclad. The bribes, the beating, the forgery, all laid bare. 25 years gone. The girls a step closer. Lena's justice in reach. A win he'd clawed from her blood. The crowd outside swelled, chanting his name. News anchors scrambling. Ward arrested. Holt's empire falls. And Jamal exhaled, ribs easing, thinking he'd avenged her, turned her pain into a blade, that he'd stand tall when she woke. But Holt wasn't caged yet, out on bail, a spectre with teeth. And as the feds closed in, 98 degrees, he struck back, fast, vicious, a call to Pike from a burner. Flip it now. And by noon, Pike sat in court, a grin tugging his lips, filing a motion. New evidence. Jamal faked that tape, planted it to frame Ward. A lie spun with doctored audio. Ward's voice twisted. Carter paid me to say it. A reversal so wild it stunned the room. Deputies storming the hospital. 100 degrees, cuffs snapping on Jamal's wrists. You're under arrest. Evidence tampering. His leg buckling as they dragged him. Lena's machines beeping faster. Maya shouting, "This is bullshit." But Pike's gavel cracked. Warrant issued, fugitive status. And Jamal's world flipped. The tape, his triumph, now a noose. Holt's laugh echoing through Pike's smirk, because he'd won, avenged Lena, toppled Ward, only to have Holt turn his own weapon against him. A sting flipped into a trap. A fugitive again. Ribs screaming, leg burning, the feds pausing. We'll investigate, too slow, too late, as deputies shoved him into a van. 99 degrees, Lena alone, his victory ash, because Holt's allies wouldn't let him win, not when they could rewrite the game, break him with his own hands. Jamal Carter crouched in the shadows of Ashwood County Courthouse, midnight cloaking the town in 100-degree heat, thunder rumbling low as rain streaked the cracked brick walls, his leg burn a pulsing ache under a soaked bandage, ribs grinding. Beneath a tattered hoodie, the fugitive warrant pinning him as a tamperer. Pike's lie that he'd faked Ward's confession tape now a chain dragging him back into this war. Lena still on life support, 90 miles away, her machines beeping, a lifeline he couldn't reach. The feds stalled, Ward cuffed but Holt free on bail, a spectre pulling strings. The trailer was ash, the girl's gone, his sting flipped. And now this, a desperate gambit breaking into Holt's office because he'd heard whispers through Maya, 98 degrees at the hospital when she'd slipped him a key. Holt's got a ledger, bribes, names, it's in there, leave stream it, end him. Her voice fierce, her car idling as she'd dropped him 3 blocks out, rain pounding, 101 degrees, his sneakers squelching mud as he ran, ribs screaming, because this was it, his last shot. A siege to rip Holt's empire bare before Pike's warrant buried him. The courthouse loomed, a relic of hate, its windows dark, a side door creaking as he slipped the key in, lock clicking, his breath shallow, leg buckling but pushing, because Esther's voice burned in his skull. They'll take your legs, your lungs, but not your fight. And he clung to it, slipping inside, the air a stagnant 99 degrees, dust thick, his flashlight flickering over warped floors, stairs groaning as he climbed, every step a risk, deputies patrolling somewhere. Close, their radios crackling faint in the night. Holt's office sat at the end, door ajar, a cave of secrets, and Jamal slipped in, 100 degrees now, sweat stinging his eyes, the desk a fortress of oak, drawers locked. But he jimmied one with a paperclip, hands shaking, papers spilling. Receipts, notes, then it. A ledger, black leather, names scrawled. Tate, Ward, Pike, dates, dollars, CPS, 1 grand, farmers. 50 each, Reese hit 2 grand. A map of corruption. Holt's hand in every blow, the gas can, the beating, Lena's blood, all inked here. A confession deeper than Ward's tape. A bomb he'd detonate. His burner phone buzzed. Maya's voice. You in? Stream it now. And he nodded, propping it on a shelf, hitting record, live streaming to her feed. 102 degrees, his voice hoarse. This is Jamal Carter, fugitive, they say. But here's the truth. Holt's ledger. Every bribe. Every hit, look. Pages flipping, camera catching names, numbers, millions watching live. Justice for Jamal spiking. Protests flaring as he spoke. They framed me, beat me, took my mum. This is their game. His ribs aching, leg trembling. But his words steel, a broadcast to shatter Ashwood's core. The feed blew up, Maya texting, 10 million views, feds are moving. And Jamal grinned, split lip stinging, because this was it, Holt exposed. Raw, undeniable. The ledger a gavel he'd slammed on their heads. A siege from a kid they'd underestimated, thinking he'd topple them from this dusty room, 25 years gone. Lena's justice close, the girls a breath away. Footsteps thudded below, 103 degrees, deputies shouting, he's here! Radios blaring and Jamal's pulse spiked, shoving the ledger in his hoodie, bolting for the window, glass shattering as he climbed out, rain lashing, thunder crashing, a fire escape slick under his sneakers, legs screaming as he slid down, boots hitting gravel, the courthouse alive now, lights flaring, sirens wailing. Because he'd done it, lit the fuse, but they were coming, fast, a net closing. He ran, ribs grinding, a block too. Maya's car screeching up, 99 degrees in the cab. Get in! And he dove, ledger clutched, her tires spinning mud as deputies swarmed. Feds rolling in, a chaos of red and blue. Holt's voice crackling over a deputy's radio. Take him out, now! Caught live, millions hearing, a roar that sealed him. The feds hit hard, 100 degrees. Agents storming the courthouse, Holt mid-rant in his office. That neat Chowdisa's dead, cut off as cuffs snapped, his jowls quivering, Ward's arrest doubling down, Pike bolting but nabbed. The ledgers, pages photocopied, broadcast looping, protests erupting, Ashwood shaking. A tide Jamal had turned from a fugitive's run. He stumbled from Maya's car, 101 degrees, courthouse steps ahead, feds nodding. You're clear, Carter. Evidence checks out. And he exhaled, ribs easing, a crowd gathering, chanting his name, Lena's face in his mind, because he'd won, exposed them, toppled the empire. Holt cuffed, Ward done, Pike finished. A hero at last, exhausted, leg buckling but standing, thinking he'd avenged her, rebuilt from ash. 25 years dust, the girl's close, freedom real, tangible, a breath he'd earned. Rain softened, 98 degrees, Maya beside him. "You're a legend, kid." Her hand on his shoulder. The crowd roaring, news vans swarming. Holt arrested, teens livestream ends reign. And Jamal let it wash over him, let the chance lift him, because he'd broken the beast, turned their game to ruin, a final stand that'd echo beyond. Ashwood beyond Georgia, a kid against a machine, victorious, battered but alive. But Holt's hate didn't die in cuffs. A last gasp lingered, because as Jamal stepped forward 100 degrees, rain streaking his face, a crack split the air. Not thunder, a sniper's shot. Deputy Rawls, Holt's final loyalist, perched. On a roof 2 blocks out, a rifle hired with Holt's last bribe. $2,000, the bullet slamming Jamal's chest, blood blooming red, soaking the hoodie, the ledger tumbling as he fell, asphalt cold, rain pooling, a gasp choking out, "Mama!" His vision blurring, the crowd screaming, Maya lunging, "No, no!" Feds bolting, Rawls vanishing into the dark. A hit to silence him. Holt's smirk alive in the shot because Jamal had won, cleared his name, toppled them. Only to take this, a sniper's mark, blood spreading, legs still, ribs quiet. A hero's. Stand cut short, the live stream catching it live, millions gasping because Holt wouldn't let him walk away. Not whole, not alive. A final blow to bury the genius who dared. Jamal Carter lay in the ICU of Ashwood County Medical, 100 degrees outside. The air inside a sterile 90, machines beeping erratic, his chest wrapped tight, blood seeping through bandages where the sniper's bullet had torn into him. On the courthouse steps, rain still streaking the windows, thunder fading as the storm broke, his hoodie shredded, leg burn raw, ribs cracked but silent now, breath shallow, eyes shut, a coma gripping him after Rawls's shot. Holt's last gasp, a $2,000 hit to silence the kid who'd toppled an empire. The room hummed, antiseptic sharp, Lena on life support 2 doors down, her own machines a faint echo, 51 years of steel fighting to wake, the girl still gone, CPS a shadow, and Jamal here, a hero felled, blood pooling on asphalt just hours ago, the ledger's pages fluttering in the rain. Maya's scream, "No, no!" looping in his fading mind, a million live stream viewers gasping as he fell. Justice for Jamal spiking, protests raging outside, 101 degrees, Ashwood reeling, feds swarming, Holt cuffed, war done, Pike nabbed, but this shot, a twist no one saw, a price too high for victory. Nurses bustled, 92 degrees now, their voices low. He's stable barely, as tubes snaked from his arms, an IV dripping, his chest rising slow, the bullet's path a mystery, doctors muttering, "Should have killed him point blank." And Maya paced outside, braids swinging, her phone buzzing. 10 million saw it, feds have Rawls in custody, her voice cracking. Because she'd pushed him, handed him the key, and now he lay here, a legend comatose, the ledger's truth live. Holt's empire ash, but Jamal's blood the cost. The crowd swelled, 103 degrees, chants shaking the pines. Jamal lives. Signs waving, news vans clogging the lot. Teen hero shot, suspect confesses because Rawls, nabbed fleeing, cracked fast. Holt paid me $2,000, said end him. A confession sealing the judge's fate, a trial set. But Jamal couldn't. Here couldn't feel the tide he'd turned. His body still mind dark, a war won, but a life hanging by threads. Hours bled into days. 99 degrees, the ICU a vigil. Maya slipping in. "You did it, kid, they're gone." Her hand on his. Lena's room silent, no change. The girl's fate a fog, and Jamal lay there, a breath from death, the bullets. Damage deep, lungs grazed, heart nicked, doctors shaking heads. Miracle he's alive. But alive wasn't awake, wasn't fighting, and Ashwood held its breath. A town split, half mourning, half sneering. Got what he deserved, the divide Holt's hate had carved. Then on the 5th day, 98 degrees, Maya sat by him, scrolling her feed. Protests nationwide now. Jamal's law trending. A push to gut corrupt courts. His name a torch when she noticed it. A bulge in his hoodie pocket, missed in the chaos. A law book, constitutional law. 3rd edition, Esther's copy. Stuffed there before the siege, its spine cracked, pages bent, and she pulled it out, frowning because it was heavy. Too heavy. a hole punched clean through, the bullet lodged in its heart, a 2-inch dent where it had stopped, saving him, grazing not piercing, a shield he'd carried without knowing. Her gasp broke the hush. "Jamal, you son of a gun," and doctors rushed in, 97 degrees, x-rays flashing. "It's true, Book took it, he'll make it, a miracle in ink and paper. Esther's gift, a twist no one saw because he'd fallen, bled, but lived." The bullet's kill shot blunted by law itself, a irony Holt couldn't touch. Days later, 96 degrees, Jamal woke, eyes fluttering, pain a raw but breath his own. Maya there. "You're alive, kid. Book stopped it." And he coughed, weak. Esther. A grin tugging his split lip, because he'd thought her. Dead, 2 years gone, cancer's toll, but now a flicker. A question because she'd taught him, fed him lore. And this book, her hand beyond the grave, saving him when Holt's sniper struck. He sat up slow, ribs screaming, leg throbbing. "I see you a blur. Where's Mama?" And Maya nodded. "Stable, holding on." Her voice soft because Lena clung too, a fighter like him. And the girls, CPS cracking under federal heat. "Coming home soon," a thread pulling tight. But the real shock dropped then. 95 degrees, Maya leaning in. "Jamal, Esther's alive. I found her, hiding in Macon, coded letters. She's been guiding you." And his world tilted, breath catching, because Grandma Esther, thought dead, wasn't a secret she'd kept, faking it to dodge Holt's wrath. Her cancer a ruse, her letters smuggled through rolls, disguised as junk. "Look closer, boy." In every line, a mastermind behind his genius, orchestrating his fight, his survival, a twist that rewrote everything because he hadn't won alone. She'd been there, ink and blood, pulling strings from shadows. He stared, jaw slack. "How?" And Maya grinned. She heard Holt's threats, went dark, fed you lore through scraps, knew you'd need it. And Jamal's chest heaved, tears streaking, because Esther, 74, frail but fierce, had outsmarted them all. Her death a play, her lessons a lifeline, the book her final shield, a legacy he'd carried, a grandmother's love sharper than Holt's hate. The feds moved fast, 94 degrees, Holt's trial hitting, Rawls' confession, the ledger, Ward's tape, Pike's flight, a mountain of guilt, and by week's end, 100 degrees, the verdict dropped. Guilty, life without parole. Holt's jowls sagging as cuffs snapped, his grey eyes dead, Ward and Pike echoing 30 years each. Ashwood's empire ash, protests cheering, a tide Jamal and Esther had turned, a family's fight from cell to grave to courtroom. Lena woke days later, 93 degrees, tubes gone, her voice weak. "Son." And Jamal limped in, legs scarred, ribs taped, hugging her tight. "We won, Mama." Tears falling, because the girls came home. CPS cowed, 8 and 10, clutching, dolls. Lena's arms open, a family stitched back, battered but whole. Jamal stepped out, 92 degrees, courthouse steps again, no rain now, a crowd roaring, thousands. "Jamal! Jamal!" Maya beside him. "You're law school bound, kid," and he smirked, legs steadying. Always was, because this wasn't the end. It was a vow, to stand as an attorney, to fight for the ones who couldn't. Holt's scars, a map. On his skin, a reminder, a call because the system hadn't blinked. He'd forced its eyes open. A kid against a machine, victorious, limping but alive. Esther's shadow behind him, a genius unveiled, a legacy begun. And Ashwood, Georgia, would never forget. Jamal Carter's journey teaches us that resilience can defy even the most oppressive systems. Facing relentless racial injustice from Judge Clarence Holt and his cronies, Jamal, an 18-year-old black teen, turned adversity into ammunition, wielding self-taught legal knowledge to expose corruption. His story reveals the power of education as a weapon. Esther's books weren't just pages. They were shields and swords, proving that intellect can outmaneuver brute force. It also underscores the cost of standing up, Lena's beating, the girl's loss, Jamal's near death, showing that justice often demands sacrifice, a brutal truth about fighting systemic hate. Holt's downfall, orchestrated by Jamal's cunning and Esther's hidden guidance, highlights that even the mighty fall when arrogance blinds them to a determined underdog. Yet the sniper's shot reminds us victories are fragile. Racism doesn't die quietly. It lashes out, leaving scars. Jamal's vow to become a lawyer signals hope, a lesson in persistence. Every battle won fuels the next. The real twist, Esther's survival, teaches us to question narratives. Truth hides in shadows, waiting for those bold enough to seek it. This tale demands we confront bias, not just in courts but in ourselves, pushing for a justice that doesn't bend to power. So, what's your take? Can one person truly shift a broken system, or does it take a village like Jamal's? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit like if this fight stirs you. Subscribe for more raw truths and share to spark change. Thanks for riding this roller coaster with us. Here's to courage that outlasts the storm.